It's just an expression. Well, it's also an art. Yeah, rolling. Like we're rolling down. Fucking rolling. Rolling. Season 2.
Welcome to the Cali High podcast. I'm your host, Chenzo Nico, and I've been a cannabis connoisseur for 50 years. Today we will talk about all things cannabis as they relate to California and beyond, from the history of buds in the state to laws that govern its use, how notable personalities of the industry and related arts, including music, shape the industry. We will bring you reports from dispensaries, cultivators, medical patients, and recreational users.
50 years.
Hey folks, this is Chenzo Nico. Welcome to Cali High's 14th episode. I'm here with Joe, the sound guy, as always.
Hi, I'm Joe, the sound guy.
And this week we have a cannabis compliance lawyer, probably one of the top ones here in California and Los Angeles. His name is Steve Lubell. He also works with the United Cannabis Business Association and other cannabis entities here in LA and California. So he's going to clue us in on a lot of information. And before we get there, I wanted to thank all our listeners.
We have listeners?
We actually do have listeners.
Wow.
And you know what? It's where they are is the kind of interesting thing. So we have the different countries, obviously the United States. Most of our listeners.
Hopefully they're speaking
here.
English
Yeah.
or they understand English.
Well, there's somebody in France that listens as soon as the episode is out. He's
Really?
in Paris.
Cool.
I believe in one of the arrondissements.
Très bon.
And
Very good.
in England as well, there's a few different locations. And,
Jolly well.
And now we have somebody in Argentina listening.
Get it on then.
So if we were to look at some of the cities, Beverly Hills, Los Angeles, Burbank, let's go to Whitney, Nevada, Manhattan.
How many? Give me numbers.
Okay, 7 in Whitney, Nevada. Like, who's listening in Nevada, right? 7 in Manhattan, 6 in Snellville, Georgia.
Word's getting out.
It is getting out. And so the guy in Paris, I think he lives in a place called Clichy, Ile-de-France,
Oh.
which is one of the arrondissements near the river, I think.
Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong. And then somebody on Kauai, in Hawaii. And then upstate New York, Carson, California.
We lost the music.
I know we did. Does that mean we're going on too long?
Yeah, we have too many listeners.
Wait a minute, bro. We have.
No,
I got
we're just
50
going to have
different
to get
other
rid of some of the
cities.
listeners.
Okay, all right. Buenos Aires. Okay, that's where the Argentina was from.
Okay.
Oklahoma City. Whoa. Dorothy and Toto.
I can give a shout out to Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Yep.
Jacksonville, Florida, Portland, Oregon, San Luis Obispo, California,
Wow.
Anchorage, Alaska, Green Bay, Wisconsin, Quincy, Massachusetts, and several other California locations.
Well, good for you, man.
Good for us.
Good for us.
Darn it.
But good for you, man.
Most
For
of them
you,
probably just tune in to hear you.
No. Dude, you got the guests, the cannabis, the cannabis lawyer thing really, that I really can't understand it, because how does the cannabis communicate to the lawyer? I mean, they can't speak. They
send smoke signals.
Oh, didn't think about that.
No, I guess not, but that's the most obvious thing for anybody to do. Set himself on fire and call a lawyer.
It's an educational show, folks. Shall we?
Okay. So let's hear from Steve Lubell. So Cali High is honored to have Steve Lubell, a cannabis compliance lawyer here in LA, and probably one of the most experienced cannabis lawyers in LA. Good day, Steve. How are you?
Good day, and thank you for that.
Oh, yes, indeed. So, Steve, can you give us a little bit about your background and what type of law you originally studied and how you became a cannabis lawyer?
Yes, I've been a lawyer for over 30 years. My first 10 years, I was a real estate lawyer representing banks, and I was moved on from there. I was a court commissioner, which is basically a judge signed by the other judges, not appointed or elected, to the Los Angeles Superior Court, where I spent 11 years primarily in a criminal calendar. Done over 150 jury trials, just hearing thousands and thousands of cases. And when I was ready to leave the bench, I have owned property up in Mendocino County for about 30 years, saw what was happening around me, and I could see compliance was going to be, in the forefront, and moved into cannabis law. Did not think we would accelerate as quickly as we did.
Yeah, it was fairly
Astonished by some
nascent
of
back
that.
then, wasn't it? I mean, just in the stages of forming.
Yes. I mean, we were still dealing with the, Compassionate Use Act and the like, and it was just, infancy, and then consulted on various pieces of regulation that eventually became McMursa, the medical end of this, that turned it into the adult end of this. And for the last 10 years, have been doing primarily compliance work, heavy in the city of Los Angeles, some in other areas, but most of everything what I did is in the city of Los Angeles. And that's where I'm at today.
Right. And you've been a consultant for the UCBA, I believe.
I've been a consultant, and I've been an expert witness in a number of cases on regulatory issues, partnership issues, and the like.
What was one of the trickier ones?
Partnership disputes. When you have a nonprofit, originally until the adult regulations came into play, everyone worked under a nonprofit, and it was looked at in the industry. It wasn't looked at as a nonprofit. Everyone looked at it as a for-profit. And the issue is to the courts was, how do you own a nonprofit when you get into partnership disputes? And some courts would not enforce the law. Some courts would enforce the law and just look beyond the statutes. So it's been all over the place that way.
Wow. So it then became for recreational use, and the laws changed so that cannabis businesses became more standard like any other business. So you also have worked with the...
Well, never like any other business. Cannabis has always been looked at. I mean, you look at things like banking and the like. So we've always been people have looked at it with, their nose up in the air a little bit.
Yeah, it's hard
Best way to describe it.
Deal as a regular business without having a bank to do it with.
Yes.
So, Steve, can you give us a little historical perspective on the evolution of cannabis law here in California and Los Angeles since the, say, pre-ICO cutoff in 2007?
Sure. So looking at it from the state end, the state of California had a number of hearings in the legislative end to work on a medical set of legislation. And there was basically a battle between legislators of who was going to get recognition. So what they did is they took 3 assembly bills, so each set of legislators could have their name on the bill, and they combined them for what became the McMursa, the medical regulations in the state of California. We operated on them for a very short period of time. And then we had Proposition 64, which the voters enacted. And it was we had, Senate bills, and then we had cleanup bills. And from my perspective, the hope would have been that we would have slowed down on adult use legislation, and I'm saying this from a lawyer's perspective, not from anyone else's perspective, so we could get a handle on regulations and we can get the industry up and running. That didn't happen.
No.
And we had to deal with an adult set of regulations. And going back to the medical regulations is the intent of this, and I attended a number of the hearings in Sacramento, was that we were always going to protect the small farmer. Did not happen. Originally, it was only going to be for California residents as investors and owners. Did not happen, and kind of put a very different spin on the industry to this date.
There must be some big money lurking.
Right. For example, you were only going to be able to have, let's say, a 10,000 square foot license, which, let's say, Mendocino, for example, allows you to have one 10,000 square foot canopy license. You go down to Santa Barbara, and they were allowing you to apply for multiple 10,000 square foot licenses as a workaround. And you had some business entities filing 30 applications for 10,000 square foot licenses. And it kind of got away from itself. In the city of Los Angeles, the pre-ICOs were individuals that were working, entities that were working, nonprofits that were working under the Compassionate Use Act.
Let me just say for our listeners who don't know, pre-ICO is pre-interim city ordinance, where Los Angeles stopped the opening of new medical marijuana places, right?
Right. So 2007 is the cutoff date.
Yeah.
So you had to show you were operating through a business registration tax certificate with the city prior to 2007. And that's the group we're dealing with in accelerating this time. They're now called the Phase 1 EMMDs, existing medical marijuana dispensaries, and the city still hasn't figured out that adult use. They're still calling them EMMDs medical. But it's this group that are consisting of the Phase 1s that have been around since 2007. Many of them had been raided over the years. Many had been shut down in the city of Los Angeles. There was a period of time where there was one DEA agent who was basically door knocking and said,
"Yeah, the
rogue
Fed agent. What was his name? I forgot his name, but
I know it. I won't say it. I wouldn't necessarily call him rogue. He just was a little cray-cray. In my view, going into an entity by himself, flashing a badge and saying, "You shut down today, or we'll be back with a posse tomorrow." Most everybody complied. There was one or two that didn't, and they got shut down, and they got their vehicles seized, and family members who might have worked for government jobs lost their jobs. There were a lot of stories that went through this.
I remember Rampart Discount had to shut down. That guy came in there and told him to shut down.
Yeah, he went through all through downtown city of Los Angeles, shutting individuals down. So back to the city of LA. So at one point, there was lots of litigation between existing operators, some who didn't qualify, some who did qualify. And the city came to a group of lawyers, myself included, 3 of us, and asked us to write a model ordinance for the city, which we did. The city then took that ordinance and basically bastardized it. They would, at the end of what we wrote, they put a comma and write something that totally didn't make sense with respect to what we had written. We then had the city response to this was a ban. They banned everybody. The existing operators with the USCW, United Food and Commercial Worker Union, Local 770, who was very instrumental, we did a referendum and we reversed the ban.
That's 2010 or 12? That's not Prop D. That was before Prop D, right?
Before Prop D.
Yeah.
So Prop D was as a result thereof. I like to say we wrote the good parts of Prop D, our group, and the city kind of destroyed it somewhat. Very frustrating.
I remember that process.
Right. And the city never, I think got over the fact that we had, reversed what they had done, but their hands were kind of forced a little bit and led up to where we are now.
How big of a role did the UFCW play in that?
Major. I don't think that we would have been able to, when I say we, I'm talking about the existing, pre-ICOs before 2007. I don't think they would have been able to do it on their own. We had weekly meetings and, fundraising and consulting and really getting out the vote. It was unheard of.
Yeah,
what we did in such a short period of time.
Stepped up big time, didn't they? And for our listeners that don't know, the UFCW is they're the union that covers grocery workers, farm workers also? Or
yes.
Yeah. And
the only
dispensary now, we have some dispensaries in that union and drugstores, right?
Right. So part of the current regulations statewide, if you have 20 or more employees, you have to enter in what's called a labor peace agreement, where you allow union representatives to come in and talk to your workers. What UCBA did in the city of Los Angeles, which none of us knew about, was they were able to get the city to agree for, this is only in the city of Los Angeles, 10 workers, where the rest of the state is 20. So for the city of Los Angeles, it's 10, which ruffled some feathers that there was no input from the industry on this. And I understand both sides of it, frankly,
Well, do you think that's beneficial for the industry, or do you think that small little dispensaries complained about going union?
I think it's beneficial for the workers. Many of the the entities that I work were already meeting the union, what the union requirements were, which is a decent wage, healthcare if you can do it, worker protection, and the like. It's a good thing. I just think from a lawyer standpoint, there should have been a little bit more input before they did that. In the city of Los Angeles, it felt it was done through closed doors, and ultimately, I think we would have all gotten to the same spot. It just feels like it could have been done a little bit differently from my perspective.
And of the city's 100 or maybe just under 200 original dispensaries, how many of them went union?
I would say I'm guesstimating there's about 20.
So many resisted unionizing.
Yes, all my clients have gone union. Because, again, the view is that you wouldn't be in business but for them. The union was very instrumental in getting that ban overturned. And you have to look back as should they not have gotten something in return for what they did, or you wouldn't be here right now because of what they did.
Oh yeah, I think they played a primary role there, especially also in Prop D, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And what's happened though now is since we're a regulated industry, remember the union represents the employees, so they've had to separate a little bit from the employers, rightfully so, because they're not representing the employers, they're representing the employees. But in order to get to that point where they could represent their employees, they had to work with the employers.
I wonder if that's why Rigo doesn't call me back.
Good man.
Just joking.
No, with the they've had so many issues. They represent a lot of the grocery workers, and there've been so many issues with grocery workers. And I think in the last even before COVID, they've been very active in protecting them. And I remember there's a Walmart that was going downtown, which has since closed, and non-union entity, and they were able, with a couple of clicks on the phone, they were able to get hundreds of people out to protest. If you recall.
Oh yeah,
that.
I remember that
so
whole scene. Yeah, I do.
They're very instrumental.
Yep. So, what is the next step for California, do you think?
In the city of Los Angeles, everyone is working under what's called a provisional one-year license. Adhere to all the regulations that would be necessary for an annual license. The only distinction is in order to get an annual license, there has to be what's called a California Environmental Quality Assurance Review for each of the licenses. The city's not doing that because the city of Los Angeles has not moved forward in processing the annual application. So until the city does their CEQA review, we're kind of stuck as far as getting annual licenses are concerned. What I'm finding, though, the provisional renewals are up right now for renewal. And you have what's called a licensing analyst. And, some of them are more regulation heavy than others, just depending what analyst you have. I mean, part of the requirements is you have to have numerous procedural manuals, quality control, inventory control, security procedures. And some of them will look at them to make sure that you're adhering to what the regulations are, and then some are you opening up the door with your left hand or your right hand? It really depends upon the luck of the drawer, I'm finding.
A little bit subjective, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
Yeah.
And frustrating, but at the same time, you don't want to upset an analyst. So it's like,
No.
it's the left hand.
Mm-hmm.
I get calls and going, what should we do? And give it to them. Give them what they want, because they're the ones that's holding the. I called it the Willy Wonka golden ticket.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're holding that for you. And we're trying to do a workaround. There is a way to do in the regulations. They call most of these entities will eventually become determined to be exempt under CEQA, and you can petition for a project exemption, which I'm in the process of doing now. And they're not quite sure what to do with it from the state end, because they don't have a lot of information from the city.
Who would get an
the
exemption?
Most of these, well, if you're a retail store and, they're looking at things like traffic, how much water are you using? I mean, a grow is different than a retail store. How much electricity you're using grows different than a retail store.
Mm-hmm.
So retail store loans, and we have what's called vertically integrated commercial cannabis entities. What that means is you have multiple licenses. You would have your retail, you'd have cultivation. There's something similar to that, which is the micro business. And I, as a practitioner, tried to steer folks away from the micro business, which would be 3 or more of those licenses under one. Why? Because let's say you've got a massive cultivation problem and they're shutting down your cultivation side. That means everything gets shut down, your retail and your third license. So hasn't happened, but cautious as we are, the preference would be just apply for separate licenses. So if you lose one, you won't lose your others.
Right. Interesting. Rather than vertically integrate.
Correct. So most of my clients who have multiple licenses, this is all the same location, have separate licenses.
Do they have to have separate corporations for each license, or how does that work?
No, it's all under the same entity.
Mm-hmm.
And these are all licenses held under that same entity. And for the most part, it's worked because, remember, City of Los Angeles, you're doing indoor cultivation. Indoor cultivation is, a difficult beast.
Yes,
in
it is.
City of LA, when it comes to power, they're finding out building and safety is just getting involved. People need upgrades. The city's not, they're dragging their feet building safety on some of it. They're not quite sure what to do with some of these.
Yeah, there's a lot of little inspections you have to pass with the grow.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you have you have different multiple entities that you're having to deal with for inspections.
Mm-hmm.
And it's your cultivation license. Originally it was farmed out to the local jurisdiction, and it wasn't the city, it was the Los Angeles County that was doing the inspections for the state.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a little different than if the state had been doing it. Like the state's doing the manufacturing inspections. And again, it depends who's your inspector. It was very subjective.
Yeah.
And is subjective.
Mm-hmm. So is there any other industry that has as much regulation as cannabis in California?
No.
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of.
Do you think that'll ever level off to where cannabis is less regulated?
No, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen it. There's ultimate battles in trying to deal with Sacramento on getting some, relaxing of regulations, and it's just not happening. On the plus side, what has surprised me in the current COVID environment is every week there's a report issued from the Bureau of Cannabis Control, which is on the state end, which gives information with respect to all the laboratory tests that were done in the state the prior week. And it's done by batch size. They don't define how big the batches is, but instead of the number going down, it's consistently gone up 90,000, 95,000. I think the last batch last week was roughly about 110,000. That surprised me.
You mean 110,000 different batches?
Batches.
Yeah.
Now, if I was the grower, though, I would give a smaller batch. So I don't know if if that's what's happening, because what happens if your batch fails, unless it's manufacturing, you can't remediate.
Right, you have to destroy it.
You lose. Yeah, you can destroy it, or you can remediate through manufacturer, depending what the lab failure was for. And they break down the failures. Majority of the failures are not pesticide; it's labeling, packaging, things like that, which is a good sign. The failure rate is running about 5% consistently, which is a really good sign. But the bigger picture of this is until we get a handle on the unregulated, unlicensed operators, this isn't going to work, because you're taxing the hell out of everybody. The regulations are very tough. It's a scary situation that we're in. I know a number of entities that they're not making it. Everyone, thinks, so let's invest in this, let's do that. But if you look at the reality of it, until they get a handle on the unlicensed, unregulated group, and frankly, some of the licensed folks play in both ends, both sides. I don't condone it, but I certainly
I've
get
heard
it.
of that, actually.
I don't condone the unlicensed, unregulated folk, but I get it.
Yeah.
You go up Northern California, the majority, not strike majority, a bulk of what's coming out of the triangle is, it doesn't stay in California.
So
that's just a reality.
Do you think that the state will ever get a handle on that?
They could have gotten a handle of that originally. I mean, let's take, for example, in the city of LA, city attorney says, hey, these are misdemeanors. This is not important to us from an enforcement standpoint. But if in the statute it says if it's you charge a conspiracy, that can be a felony, and you could charge a felony. And I don't want people to get charged or anything, but I want to look at this from a legal end, is that if they had wanted to, they could have handled these cases over to the district attorney, and they could have quickly dealt with the issue. But for some unknown reason, there's been enforcement, but cops have boat payments and ex-wives. If they don't get overtime, they're not inclined to really work on some of these cases. And I say this anecdotally, but there's some truth to it, is they need money to the thought process is they need money to process these cases. I don't believe that. They could be handled as routine cases. Biggest culprit has been weed maps. They were allowing advertising, and there was a law that says you have to have a license number in the advertising. Well, weed maps made up their own numbers and said, here's your number, and not a state license number, even though it was clear it was meant to be a state license.
Right.
Weed maps have stopped doing that, but if you look at the CBD advertisements now in weed maps, a lot of them are not just CBD.
Yeah, I know some questionable shops that went from regular marijuana to CBD overnight after that happened. Yeah.
And you look at, from a consumer side, is if a consumer can get the same item for $25 instead of with all the taxes spending $75, I understand what a consumer is going to do, but what the consumer doesn't understand is that where's the laboratory testing?
Yeah, they could be being poisoned.
Often they are, because if you look at now that, you can't use a lot of the hormone products that were put into products, the buds are much smaller. And that's as a result of
plant growth hormone?
Puffed up with chemical.
Yeah. Hey, Steve, you heard about the Safe Banking Act? And
yes.
Do you think that's going to pass in Congress? And if it does, how will that change things?
Well, today it was included in the new stimulus bill.
Right.
And if it passes, I think it'll change the industry. And look at it from, if I was a state person or a government person, if you want to know what's happening in the industry, let them bank. Otherwise, you have no idea about the cash.
Right.
And why should I have a client, let's say, the renewal fees are in the tens of thousands of dollars. So many of these locations, they don't have banks. Or if you use your credit card, or if you use your bank and they see anything related to cannabis, they close your account down. So I have clients having to drive up to Sacramento with $40,000, $60,000, $70,000 on an appointment to pay a renewal fee. It's unconscionable from a safety standpoint.
Oh, not only that, but money is dirty. Cash. Why would we subject the workers to handling so much cash anyway?
And then you would know who got what. You're required to have a point of sale system now. The biggest game changer for the regulated market was what we call track and trace.
Mm-hmm.
So for the first year or so, it was very loose. And then after the first of this year, it really got implemented. And you could see the change through the reporting that everything now had to go through the point of sale system off a barcode. And so everything is accounted for, from, the babies to, when you buy a pre-roll in the store. Waste, everything's accounted for now. So it's become much more difficult to kind of, play the system.
It seems a little bit draconic. The alcohol industry isn't regulated to such a degree, is it?
No.
Yeah. And that's kind of...
Not at all.
Counterintuitive, it seems
and
like.
That's kind of the closest regulatory, and regulations you could think of. And they're heavily regulated, but not anything near what's happening.
Yeah. Well, do you think most of your clients, the people you represent, would be in favor of the Safe Banking Act passing today?
Absolutely. To have banking to be able to act like a normal business. The way I look at it, the duffel bag days are over. Everybody misses that. Here's a duffel bag full of cannabis, and here's a duffel bag for cash in exchange. Have a good day.
Uh-huh.
And it was done on a handshake, and it worked fairly well for a long time. And now everyone's being held accountable. And I'll tell you a little story. There were people who, when I was on the bench, who I remember appearing in front of me, entering pleas for various cases, putting on probation. And now a decade later, I see them out in the industry, and they are doing everything they can to become legitimate business people. They want to be legitimate.
Oh, yeah.
They want to report. They want to pay their taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very frustrating when you see a group who want to do the right thing. None of my clients, and there's a lot of cannabis lawyers, but there's a very small group of us, is what I call schooled cannabis lawyers. And all of our clients feel the same way. They want to do the right thing. Why won't you let them do the right thing? And it's very frustrating to see that impediment to having a lawful, regulated industry.
Do you think that the city council has had anything to do with the lack of shutting down the illegal operations in L.A.?
Yes. I think the mayor, the city attorney, could have pushed this. And the city attorney has filed a lot of cases. Don't get me wrong. But you need to really... I remember when we first started this, there really were only a handful of rogues. I'm going back years and years and years, only a handful of rogues, and it just proliferated. It's you take one out, they open up the next day. I get it; it's kind of a whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
And the hardest part is delivery services. And frankly, and I've never seen it done, and I hope they don't do it. They can arrest the person who got the illegal delivery if they wanted to. I always thought that if they wanted to rattle the industry, and they've never done that, is take one. This was done up in Northern California. Take one building and seize the building. Call your press conference and going, this is what we're going to do. We've seized your building. Even up in Northern California, nobody but one person lost their building because they didn't want to, as they say, they didn't want to play. Everyone else, you paid a lot of money, you got your hands slapped, you kept your building. But the idea was, you had to get to the landlords and the building owners in order to work with closing the unlawful market. And I'm looking at it from a public safety standpoint. I'm kind of scared with what some people are ingesting without knowing, especially a medical patient who may be compromised, a cancer patient who may be compromised.
Yeah, well, I think the city could have done something a lot sooner and to a greater degree, and it still can. But we've had some crooks working for our city council, and lately that's come out in the news. We won't mention any names right here. But they were some of the people that were
and pled, and you have another one who was very anti-cannabis, strongly anti-cannabis, who's may have some issues.
Who was
issues.
ex-law enforcement, I believe he was.
Yeah, the one who pled, yes, was a reserve officer, and there's another one or more in the council that may have some issues. You always thought about what was going on. Why wasn't there more enforcement?
Yeah, was somebody on the take or what? I don't know.
Well, some have been allegedly on the take for other things. Again, allegedly.
Right, of course.
Bag full of cash.
And we're only speculating, yes.
And the same thing is, we're hearing the same thing in the social equity program now. Is like there were a lot of promises supposedly made that people have egg on their face. They weren't able to, go forward with what's happened in the social equity program.
Oh, I have a friend that was arrested a few times in his lifetime for cannabis, and he's having troubles engaging with the social equity program. So it's like it doesn't seem to be working.
And the idea of the social equity program is wonderful if it's really done and it's really helping the people that need it. But, a lot of them, there's a lot of backroom deals that aren't really publicized, but it's not part of your application, but it's done on the handshake or whatever, and that's what's going on. And even with the pre-ICOs, you have the silent partners who don't want to become owners. None of my clients, but I know of others. In order for me to work with you, you got to be able to, the truth will set you free is the way I feel. And if not, then I don't want to work with you.
Well, we hope the city deals in a lot more truth from here on.
But I don't understand why they haven't moved forward with at least the phase ones and get them through the process. The city thought process is, well, we won't do that until we take care of the social equity program people. And as you know, that was, there were some issues with, significant issues with the timing of applications. The city did an audit, but if you look at the entity that did the audit, it really is risk compliance. So my view is the city looking at more as what's our risk versus what's the right thing to do. And I don't have an opinion on this, on what they should do or not do, but let's do something rather than, what are we waiting for?
Yeah.
As far as some of this.
If I went out and opened up a liquor store just without a license, how long would I stay open? I wonder. Probably not as long as an illegal cannabis dispensary. I'll tell you that.
Well, that goes back when you talked about, when, Prohibition ended, right? There were a lot of unlawful liquor stores. How many unlicensed liquor stores do you know of now? I don't know of any.
None.
But
zero. Yeah.
I'll give you another example of the city of Los Angeles. So originally when the state regulations came out, they wanted all these procedural manuals, and they were done free form. And I spent weeks and weeks, as my colleagues did, putting together really good manuals, under the regulations. And then one day the city said, nope, we want these on our forms. I go, wait, we just gave you these, they got indexes and attachments and graphs. They go, nope, we want them on the forms. Okay, went back and spent weeks and weeks and weeks putting them on the forms. So when the city of Los Angeles did their licensing, they came up with their own procedural manuals. And I asked them, to a city attorney, why couldn't you just take what the state had done, which was very, very thorough? And, it's well known that there's a pissing match between the city and the state on cannabis. And it was almost like, nope, we don't want their stuff. We want our stuff. Okay, so had to do a new set of manuals. And that cost clients money.
Yeah.
Why should they, they're caught in it, and they're spending all this money with counsel or others, who are writing manuals for them.
Well, we certainly have a big bureaucracy here, Steve, and I hope it gets a little bit easier for the cannabis industry in the future. So anyway, I want to thank you for talking to us. today. Cali High is really thankful for you. Do you want to give a contact number or a website where people can contact you if they want to consult you?
StephenLubell.org or StephenLubell.com. My contact information's right there.
Excellent. And that's Lubell.
Correct.
All righty. Okay,
And
Steve.
remember, everyone, these are just my opinions of having done this for a long time and watching the evolution. I'm not the only say-so in this. As Dr. Fauci said the other day, it's just my subjective views on it, and I know there's a lot of different opinions, and I respect everyone's opinions in this, and I just hope we all can continue to work together to get to the ultimate goal of having a good, safe commercial cannabis industry so that the operators can make a decent wage, the employees can make a decent wage, and the public can get cannabis at a reasonable price, and they know their product's been tested and safe. That's the goal here.
Yes.
We applaud that.
Yes. Absolutely.
Well, Steve, thank you again, and have a great day. We'll be talking to you soon, and we really appreciate what you've done for the industry up until now. So I just wanted to tell you that.
Great. Thank you all.
All righty. Bye-bye,
Thanks for doing
Steve.
this.
Yeah, our pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Well, thanks for listening, folks. That was episode 14, and we heard from Steve Lubell. And you know what? We were talking about our listeners earlier, but
You left some out.
I did leave some out.
How many?
Well, I was only looking at who had listened to the last 5 episodes.
Okay.
And so,
So
when
give us an
let me just
update.
give you the rundown. In
Yeah, okay.
the United States, obviously, France, Brazil, Canada, Ireland, United Arab Emirates, Germany, United Kingdom, Belgium, India, Turkey, the Netherlands, Switzerland, and Argentina. Okay?
Wow.
So, quite a bit more than we just mentioned. And you know what's coming up?
What?
Our first annual fundraiser.
What?
Yeah, we've got some amazing T-shirts made,
Oh,
and we're going to
merch.
have those for an unspecified donation,
Oh, yeah.
the amount to be determined.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and
Then you can keep doing shows like this.
yeah, and you and I will sign them, and there'll be special first T-shirt editions of the Cali High original T-shirt. We've got V-necks for women
Oh,
and regular T-shirts for guys.
V's and T's.
Yep, 4-color process.
Really?
Yeah.
Groovy.
You can't have Cali High logo without 4 colors.
Are we going to have to extend the music again?
I don't know. But anyway, folks, also, I believe we have a Patreon account attached to our website. So if you would like to donate to Cali High, you like what we're doing, and you would like to keep us doing it, feel free to donate some dough.
If you want to have a front row seat to the next episode of the 7 Reefers sampling,
As soon as the COVID virus quarantine is lifted,
that would be great. Like
we'll
an arena.
Yeah.
Like, a Thunderdome.
Might
We
even
walk
rent
in.
out the Hollywood Bowl
That would be cool.
because there's
We
so
have
many
re-
listeners that would
Have
want.
some reggae music.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Maybe we could actually become concert promoters. All right. So stay tuned for next week, folks. We have a surprise guest.
Oh, yeah. We don't even know. Stay safe.
All righty. Be well, folks.